Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Business Innovators Radio. This is your host, Constant Taylor. Today we have a very special guest on the show, and they are going to share some very powerful information with us. So, if you're looking to increase your personal and professional effectiveness, you have come to the right place. Our special guest today is Robin Lavitch. Robin has been speaking professionally for over 15 years. The content that Robin primarily speaks on is personality style, mind that matters, patterns of persuasion, and the newest traits of being triumphant. Robin has spoken primarily nationally and is based out of Tampa, Florida. She has a new book coming out soon called Rise Above. Robin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to kick off the show by asking you to tell the viewers about your speaking experience, the types of groups that you speak to, and the content that you cover.
Okay. So I speak to a diverse group of people nationally. I work a lot in my coaching practice with doctors and lawyers. So a lot of the groups I work with are related to the legal profession.
Okay.
But I also am involved in social service organizations. I have an adoption council coming up and other types of businesses like that.
Okay.
And the topics I primarily talk about, you had mentioned the mind that matters and the personality. MIND is an acronym for the 4 different behavioral styles. M is the motivator, I is the investigator, N is the nurturer, and D is the director. So depending on the group that I'm speaking to, I will talk about personality in terms of communication, conflict resolution, time management, leadership, sales, even hiring and selection of personnel.
Okay, great. And how do you go about assessing the different styles, the motivator versus the introvert? Do you have an online assessment that they do, a written assessment? How do you extract that?
I do. I have an online version, which is similarly based off of the DISC, and I also have a paper and pencil version. My background is actually in psychology. I have a master's in psychology, and I'm just getting my doctorate in human behavior. So I'm fascinated with personality, and also teaching people how to identify other people's personalities so that they can quickly adapt. Sometimes we offend people without realizing it. And most often, the people that are most opposite to us tend to be most annoying. And the people that are most similar to us, we tend to get along with.
Okay.
So the motivator style tends to be very upbeat, enthusiastic, very persuasive, easy to get along with. But they tend to talk super fast, and they love to be the center of attention.
Okay.
And so sometimes they might annoy people because they like to hog the limelight and they go really fast. The opposite style of that is the investigator. The investigator does not like the limelight. They actually are very meticulous, very methodical. These are your perfectionists. Oftentimes they're engineers, accountants, people that like data, that they like systems, they like processing. And they tend to get stuck in paralysis through analysis because they're overthinking things. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times when a motivator connects with an investigator, the motivator feels like the investigator just sucks the life out of them. And the investigator feels like the motivator is just too Pollyanna and embellishes too much. So those are 2 of the styles. And then the nurturer and the director are also opposite. The nurturer is very kind, considerate. They're your typical people pleasers. They have a very hard time setting boundaries, but they're very sensitive, incredibly considerate to other people. They like to do a really good job, and they like to create harmony. And the opposite style of that is the director. And the director is the one who likes to get things done, jumps in very quickly, not terribly sensitive. They're sometimes seen as rude, but they're very aggressive and focused on their goals. So they've got laser lightning focus on what it is that they want to achieve. And so the nurturers and the directors don't always see eye to eye, although in all of the trainings I've done, interestingly enough, they tend to be married more than anything.
Interesting. Now, is there a graph where, like, for example, a person who's a director would be maybe a level 8 director, or could that person have other traits or characteristics, or is a director strictly a director, an introvert strictly an introvert?
Oh, that's a good question. Most of the population, about 75% of the population, tends to be a blend of two.
Okay.
It's very unusual to have one person 100% that style. I have seen it. It's difficult because they tend to struggle a little bit more with being adaptable to the other styles.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes you have people that are a blend of 3 styles. But most of the time they're a blend of 2 styles. They have one dominant style and then a secondary style. What you might find over time is their most dominant style, even 20 years apart, might be the same, but their secondary style might shift a little bit depending on what they have going on.
Interesting. So next question is, are there 2 styles that work very well together? And are there 2 styles that are like oil and vinegar?
Opposites tend to be oil and vinegar. So your motivator, investigator, don't connect initially, and they warm up to each other a little bit over time, but it's never wonderful. And same thing with the director and the nurturer. What you will find, though, is a director connects very well with a director initially. Over time, that kind of falls apart as they vie for power. The motivator and the motivator connect very well initially as well, and then over time that kind of crumbles a little bit because they're fighting over attention and talking over one another. The nurturer is actually a little slow to warm up to connect with people, but of all of the styles, they actually get along with all 4 styles over the long run. And similar with the investigator. The investigator is also really slow to warm up. They do better over time with the different styles. They just never do wonderful with the motivator style.
Gotcha. Motivator. Now, what about nurturer on nurturer? How is
they
that?
They get along very well.
Okay.
Initially and over the long term.
Okay. A lot of hugging going on there, I would imagine.
Yeah. It's tough to make a decision because they don't want to step on each other's toes. So they're usually saying, "What do you think?" "I don't know. What do you think?" "Where do you want to go?" "Doesn't matter. Where do you want to go?"
That is very, very interesting. So when you're engaging with a company for the first time, so you've got your clients that you've been dealing with for years, but when you've got a new engagement, how do you approach that from the first day that you walk through the door?
As in terms of coaching or in terms of speaking or both?
Let's do in terms of coaching. So you're in there,
okay.
And even maybe evaluation first. So you're kind of evaluating to see what's going on.
Right. That is the first step. When I meet with someone, I'm listening for what they're saying in terms of what their needs are. Mm-hmm. I'm also assessing what their particular style is. Knowing their style, I don't even actually need to meet somebody. I can tell via email or just a voicemail what their typical style is. But once I know their style, I have a pretty good understanding of what some of their challenges will be. So as I'm listening to them, I'm listening for what is self-imposed that they're not aware of, and what is actually external to them and something that we can actually work through. So then when I create a plan, I'm looking at what's the control and the influence that you have yourself in order to grow, and then what are the changes that need to be made systematically or operationally in order to smooth things along.
Okay. Do you find companies utilize your services and this tool for not really performance evaluations, but for potential improvement and pay raises and possible promotions?
They use a tool when they've given a performance evaluation. If they've identified a specific goal that could be tied to maybe a bonus or a raise, I'm usually brought in to help them achieve the goal. So for instance, if let's say one person that I'm working with does a really good job in their day-to-day type operations, but they're not very strong in initiative and managing projects. Mm-hmm. So they need to learn a little bit more in terms of how to manage a team, how to be accountable, how to help them sustain motivation. Then if that's one of their goals, they may bring me in to help them achieve that goal. And then they'll get a bonus or a raise or a promotion. Or sometimes they've promoted somebody. This happened a lot where I may work with somebody who's recently been promoted as a new manager or as a new leader, but they don't have all the skill sets necessary. And so I'll come in and actually work with them and coach them on developing those skills.
Okay, great. Now I'd like to dig into your book a little bit that you got coming out soon called Rise Above. Could you give me some context and the viewers of the listeners of what this book is going to be about and how it can help them?
Sure. So since I was a young girl, I've been fascinated with trying to answer a question, which is, how is it that you have two people that have similar upbringings, they could be siblings, same type of circumstances, same environment, same genes, and somehow you have one that seems to be very successful and they tend to soar, and another one who just seems to crumble. I've wanted to know what that difference is. And there's a term in the research called resiliency, which is what are those variables that allow people to overcome any type of trauma or tragedy or adversity. And the people that are seen as resilient are those who they pretty much can bounce back very easily against adversity. And my belief is that if you can identify what those traits are, then you can teach people to actually be triumphant. And so the book is a memoir that pretty much goes through what all of the potential risk factors are that I've endured and other people may have endured, and then the skill sets necessary to actually overcome all of that. My ultimate goal is that we would teach teens the traits to being triumphant. So no matter what it was they experienced, they would have the capacity to be able to bounce back. And so it's a personal story with a lot of lessons in there in terms of the top 10 traits of being triumphant.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Now, what has been your greatest challenge in basically attempting to have corporations going in, doing a consulting project, and having corporations incorporate your information?
One of the things is when you deliver a training, most people get very excited about the training and they have all the best intentions to actually implement things. But training is only one piece of the puzzle. They actually need to take the time and come up with a game plan in terms of how to implement things. And you might get a lot of hype from a training if it's a couple hours or a half day where people are really excited, but how to have people actually retain that information and then utilize that information is different. So a lot of times when people are bringing me in to actually do the training, I'm wanting to make sure that they get the application from it. And some are just interested in doing the training, and it doesn't sustain over a long term if there's not a game plan to do that.
Mm-hmm. Are there any follow-up mechanisms or kind of long-term engagements that I'm sure that you offer them, that you're able to put in place to make sure that there's continuity there?
Always, yeah. Typically, when I go in to do a training or a speaking engagement, as I'm assessing what their particular needs are, I'm looking at it with two different mindsets. The first mindset is what the information they need to facilitate and for me to teach. And the second is, how will they actually apply that information? So who's going to carry that information forward? How is the conversation going to remain alive? What are the follow-up activities actually going to be? And so I build that in as part of the training and the follow-up, so it helps them with the execution. Okay.
And what are you most proud of in all of your years of consulting and speaking and actually helping corporations?
That's a great question. I'm really most proud of how I've managed the business over the last 10 years. each year is a different focus and a different opportunity to make an impact with people. But you have to be able to systematize things, and whatever it is you're going to coach or teach other people about, you have to have lived through it. And so I like that I have the personal experience of having run businesses in the past, as well as taking my business to various levels, diversifying revenue streams, that kind of thing, so that I have the personal experience to share that with my clients so that they can gain from that.
Okay, fantastic. In closing, I'd like to ask, how can the listeners learn more about you, the services that you provide, and get in touch with you if they would like to?
Well, they can certainly go to my website, which is surpassyourgoal.com. There's a listing there of coaching activities, training topics. If you want to take the Mind That Matters assessment, you can do that right online, and it will email you the link to do that on your own. You can also call me directly at 844-4-SURPASS.
Okay, and then an email address?
Yep, at robin@surpassyourgoal.com.
Okay, great. Robin, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us about the great work that you're doing. Very fascinating information that you've shared with our listeners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.